I have a season ticket to Golden State Warriors. And being now a successful tech founder, I got to afford to have courtside seats. And I don't indulge in a lot of things, but I indulge in courtside seats. So I have what you might call a front row seat for all the Warriors championship games. But just because I had a front row seat at championships doesn't mean I can coach an NBA team. And that's true of venture capitalists. Just because you had a front row seat at a bunch of companies doesn't mean you now know how to run a company or advise other people to run a company. See, Keith started companies. Keith ran companies. Keith was a COO or a head of BD at companies, and that's where you're most valuable. Now, you do have some pattern recognition as a VC, but I think the most valuable experience is your operating experience. So number one, my first thing is I would try to always bias towards raising money from investors that have started or run companies or been the COO or an executive at a company. I would also be very wary of junior partners joining your board because they tend to be the most risk averse and will be least likely to potentially, not always, but often have your back when times go bad. And the senior partners will just say, get rid of them or do something, and they're not going to have the moral authority to stand up for them. So the first thing is make sure you have the right board member, because board members are kind of people you can't fire. And so, you're going to be at their mercy. And I would also say that the average board member is kind of like a 0 or a 0.1. In other words, they're not going to build your company. The executives are going to build your company. A few board members could be transformationally helpful, and more likely some board members are going to detract a lot of value. So board members can't make companies, but they can destroy companies. I saw that with OpenAI, or almost destroyed companies. And so I think you have to be very careful about that. As far as, to answer your question directly, what do you do with, a board member where your intuition is telling you something and the board member is telling you something conflicting, but they're like, 30, 20 years in tech, they've seen everything they say, and you can't tell them, oh, you've never played basketball. That will offend them. Don't do that. I've tried that. Don't do that. It doesn't actually work. It won't work. I think it helps, first of all, to have, ideally, like I've had issues where I've had a disagreement with the board member, and the people that would often have my back would be other competent board members. So I would call the other competent board member and I'd say, hey, I'm having a real problem. Can you weigh in? What would you do? And I'd say, well, do you think you could talk to them? And that often helps. And let's say you have no board member that is competent or is willing to stick their neck out. I mean, first of all, that's a problem, but let's say you don't have that, because you might not. Then I would, God, what would I do then? I would, I guess I would just dig in, and not dig in an argumentative way, but say, oftentimes when people are giving you bad advice, they're like doing misappropriated pattern recognition. So I would take them into the details. Say, I totally hear you, but can I just walk you through the details of the problem? And the more you walk them through the details of the problem, the more you're likely to take them on a journey. And that journey, first of all, they might just defer to you because they realize, wow, like they feel very strongly. The act of them writing up an argument, if you write up a long argument, they're going to 80% of the time, they're just going to back off. The other 20%, they're going to keep going, but at least now walk through the journey with them. And very rarely will they be obstinate. And if they are, then you have to make a decision. Do you listen to them or not? And even so, my argument is if you listen to here's the unfortunate thing. Oftentimes, if you take advice from a VC and it doesn't work and you don't have traction, you're still held responsible. So the only thing that matters is you're successful, not if you listen to them or not. People sometimes forget and they're like, well, you shouldn't have listened to me. They don't say it that way, but that's kind of the way it happens.